Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. In 2020, the University of Cambridge Library announced that two notebooks written by Charles Darwin, worth many millions of pounds, had been missing for 20 years and had probably been stolen. One of the notebooks contains Darwin's famous sketch of the Tree of Life, exploring the relationship between species. 3.6% of all current cancer cases worldwide are attributable to alcohol consumption. Alcohol is linked to several types of cancer, including cancers of the mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, breast, and colon and rectum. When the body processes ethanol, it produces acetaldehyde, a substance capable of damaging DNA and interfering with its repair. Alcohol consumption can also alter hormone levels and facilitate the absorption of other carcinogenic substances. The risk generally increases as the amount and frequency of consumption rise. For this reason, international organizations have classified alcoholic beverages as carcinogenic to humans for decades, regardless of whether they are beer, wine, or liquor. Bangladesh is the most populous country that has never won an Olympic medal. With a population of more than 170 million people, it has regularly participated in the Summer Olympic Games since the 1980s, but it still has not reached the podium. Its representatives have competed in disciplines such as track and field, swimming, archery, shooting, and gymnastics. Tuberculosis was first brought to the Americas by seals that contracted it on the beaches of Africa and carried it across the Atlantic to South America approximately 1,000 years ago. It was probably first contracted by hunters who handled contaminated meat. Rachel McAdams, who plays 17-year-old Regina George, was 25 years old at the time. Her mother in the movie, Amy Poehler, was only 8 years older at 33. Although some citric acid is obtained from lemon juice, most commercially sold citric acid is extracted from a black mold that produces citric acid after feeding on sugar. The microorganism commonly used is Aspergillus niger, which is grown industrially in large containers where it is supplied with sugar-rich solutions, often obtained from molasses, corn, or other raw materials. During fermentation, it produces large amounts of citric acid, which is then separated, purified, and crystallized. This method began to be used industrially in the early 20th century because it was much more efficient than extracting the compound directly from citrus fruits. Today, citric acid is widely used in foods, beverages, medications, cosmetics, and cleaning products. The famous "We Can Do It" poster was barely known during World War II. It was displayed for only 2 weeks as part of a series of posters intended to boost worker morale at a company's factories. It remained virtually unknown until the 1980s, when it was rediscovered in an article about the National Archives. Lone Star ticks can cause you to develop an indefinite allergy to red meat if they bite you. This reaction is known as alpha-gal syndrome and is associated with a molecule found in the meat of most mammals. After certain bites, the immune system may begin producing antibodies against that molecule. Unlike many food allergies, symptoms often appear several hours after eating beef, pork, or lamb, which can make the cause difficult to identify. Some people also react to products derived from mammals. The sensitivity may decrease over the years if new bites are avoided, although in some cases, it persists for long periods. Menstruation is actually very uncommon among mammals. Aside from humans, only 9 species of primates, 4 species of bats, the elephant shrew, and 1 species of mouse menstruate. All other female mammals reabsorb the uterine lining instead of shedding it. It is possible to see every letter as a color. This is known as grapheme color synesthesia. People with this form of synesthesia may automatically associate letters and numbers with specific colors, even when they are printed in black. For one person, the letter A might be red and the number 5 green, while another person may perceive completely different associations. What is remarkable is that these associations often remain surprisingly stable for years. Researchers have used this consistency to study how the brain connects areas involved in symbol recognition, visual perception, and color. Some people even discovered that they have synesthesia by comparing their experiences with those of others. No one has ever seen a newborn great white shark pup or a birth in the wild. Much of their reproduction remains one of the least understood aspects of the biology of this species. Scientists know that the embryos develop inside the mother and obtain additional nutrients by consuming unfertilized eggs produced in the uterus. Females give birth to live young that are already considerable in size and must fend for themselves from birth. Locating the exact areas where births occur is especially difficult because great white sharks travel enormous distances across the ocean. Identifying these locations would make it possible to protect areas that are essential during the earliest stages of their lives. Humans are uniquely efficient at conserving water compared with other primates, using between 31 and 50% less per day. A study published by Duke University revealed this characteristic, which likely helped our ancestors survive by allowing them to travel farther in search of food without needing nearby water resources. Kurt Cobain was wearing 3 pairs of pants when he died. According to reports from the scene, he was wearing several layers of clothing, including overlapping garments on the lower part of his body. Cobain was found at his home in Seattle in April 1994, although authorities determined that he had died several days earlier. Layered clothing was common in his personal style and fit the aesthetic associated with grunge at the time, which was characterized by loose, worn clothing combined with little concern for fashion conventions. His way of dressing ultimately had a significant influence on popular culture in the 1990s. In 2016, an Oregon man practically dissolved inside a hot spring at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming after accidentally falling into it. There is a wasp that lays a single egg inside a ladybug. Once the larva emerges up to 27 days later, after feeding on the ladybug's body, it turns the ladybug into a zombie that protects it while the larva develops inside a cocoon underneath it. The wasp, known as Dinocampus coccinelli, uses the ladybug's body as shelter during a crucial stage of its development. While positioned over the cocoon, the ladybug can make defensive movements that help keep potential predators away. Most surprisingly, some ladybugs survive the process and regain some of their normal behavior after the adult wasp leaves the cocoon. Combining 50 milliliters of alcohol and 50 milliliters of water does not result in 100 milliliters. When mixed, the water and alcohol molecules rearrange themselves and can pack more closely together, causing a slight contraction in the total volume. In a mixture of water and ethanol, interactions known as hydrogen bonds change the molecular arrangement and reduce the spaces between the molecules. The exact amount of contraction depends on factors such as the proportions used and the temperature. This is an important phenomenon in laboratories and industries where alcohol concentrations must be measured with great precision. Nearly 2/3 of all meteorites discovered on Earth are found in Antarctica. This does not necessarily mean that many more meteorites fall there, but rather that the continent's conditions make them much easier to locate and preserve. Dark space rocks stand out against the vast expanses of ice and can remain preserved for thousands of years because of the extreme cold and minimal chemical alteration. In addition, the movement of glaciers can transport and concentrate meteorites in certain areas of blue ice. Some specimens recovered there came from the Moon and Mars and have made it possible to study materials formed long before humanity existed. When the peanut plant is pollinated, the flower loses its petals. The bare flower bud hangs from its stem and grows toward the ground until it penetrates the soil. Once it reaches the proper depth, it develops into a peanut. After fertilization, an elongated structure known as a gynophore forms, pushing the ovary toward the ground and several inches beneath the surface. There, protected from light, the pod containing the seeds we eat begins to develop. This is why, although the plant flowers above the surface like many others, its fruits mature underground. Each plant can produce numerous pods through this unusual process. Castrated men do not go bald. Baldness is caused by hormones that castrated men do not produce. In particular, androgenetic alopecia is closely linked to dihydrotestosterone, a hormone derived from testosterone that acts on the hair follicles of genetically susceptible people. Over time, these follicles become progressively smaller and produce thinner hairs until they are barely visible. Observations made decades ago showed that castration performed before baldness began could prevent its development, while performing it afterward did not automatically restore lost hair. Genetics largely determines how sensitive the follicles are to these hormones. Sylvester Stallone asked Survivor to write the song Eye of the Tiger because Queen would not allow him to use Another One Bites the Dust. 17 million telegrams are still sent every year. By comparison, more than 200 billion emails are sent every day. They are most commonly sent to fulfill certain legal requirements or to express congratulations or condolences. In 1998, Lay's introduced fat-free potato chips containing a fat substitute called Olestra. They were incredibly popular, generating $400 million in sales in their first year alone. That lasted until the following year, when sales fell by half because Olestra caused side effects such as abdominal cramps, diarrhea, and anal leakage. Solitary confinement makes it difficult for prisoners to separate reality from their own thoughts, which can lead to confused thinking, perceptual distortions, paranoia, and psychosis. Physical effects include lethargy, insomnia, heart palpitations, and anorexia. Helium was detected in the sun before it was detected on Earth. That is why it was named after Helios, the Greek god of the sun. The first clue appeared during a solar eclipse in 1868, when astronomers observed a yellow spectral line in sunlight that did not correspond to any known element. Astronomer Norman Lockyer proposed that it belonged to an unknown element present in the sun. Years later, helium was also identified in minerals on Earth, confirming that this element, which had seemed exclusive to our star, also existed on our planet. Today, we know that it is the second most abundant element in the universe, surpassed only by hydrogen. Metallica released a video in 2012 asking for help solving the 2009 murder of a 20-year-old fan, Morgan Harrington, who disappeared after their concert. They offered an additional $50,000 on top of the $100,000 offered by police. In addition to being the youngest person to achieve an EGOT, the fastest to achieve it, and the only person to win an EGOT twice, composer Robert Lopez, who wrote music for works such as Disney's Frozen, broke the previous record for the fastest person to achieve an EGOT, a record that he himself had previously held. Egyptian builders, such as those who built the pyramids, were generally not slaves and frequently took sick days. Common excuses included a scorpion sting, bleeding, problems with the wife, eye problems, and even brewing beer. Bubble wrap was the result of a failed experiment to create textured wallpaper and was never intended to be protective packaging material. It was developed in the late 1950s by inventors Alfred Fielding and Mark Chavanis, who sealed two plastic shower curtains together, leaving small pockets of air trapped between the layers. When the wallpaper idea failed, they tried marketing the material as insulation for greenhouses. That did not work as they had hoped either. Its true potential emerged when it began to be used to protect products during transportation, especially delicate electronic equipment. The company founded around the invention would eventually become Sealed Air. Gravity on the International Space Station is approximately 90% as strong as gravity on Earth. It appears to be zero gravity because the astronauts in the space station are in a continuous state of freefall while orbiting Earth. Disney co-founder Roy Disney spent time with his grandchildren every week at Disneyland. Roy greeted every employee by name and picked up any trash he saw on the ground to teach them that no one is too important to pick up litter. There was a maritime disaster deadlier than the Titanic, the Sultana disaster. Carrying 6 times the permitted number of passengers, the Sultana sank in the Mississippi River, causing the deaths of more than 1,100 Union soldiers. The tragedy received little attention because it occurred days after Lincoln's assassination. In 2012, the movie screen at the Sphere in Las Vegas required such a high resolution that they built the largest commercially available sensor in the world, a 316-megapixel camera capable of 18K resolution. The image on the screen is 16K, powered by 25 synchronized 4K video servers processing around 60 gigabytes of footage per second. Jim Carrey won consecutive Golden Globe Awards as an actor for The Truman Show and Man on the Moon, without receiving an Oscar nomination for either one, and he still has never been nominated for an Oscar. Throughout recorded history, a wild orca has never killed a human being, even though orcas are capable of killing even a great white shark. Orcas in captivity, however, have killed 4 people, with 3 of those deaths caused by the same individual animal. Ben Stiller developed the premise for Tropic Thunder while filming Empire of the Sun. He wanted to make a movie based on actors he knew who became conceited and seemed to believe they had actually been part of a military unit after attending training camps to prepare for war movie roles. There is an organization called the National Diaper Bank that coordinates and facilitates diaper donations to families in need. 1 in 2 families in the United States cannot afford enough diapers to keep their baby or child clean, dry, and healthy. Even the recommended daily amounts of vitamin C are not enough to recover from a scurvy-like illness within a 6-month period. When a severe deficiency exists, Treatment usually requires amounts of vitamin C greater than normal nutritional needs for a certain period. The body needs to restore its reserves and resume producing collagen normally, a protein essential for the skin, blood vessels, gums, and wound healing. United States troops using flashcard applications to study accidentally revealed classified information about nuclear weapons in Europe, such as the locations of the vaults, the positions of surveillance cameras, signs, passwords, and security words. The only man Al Capone feared was Chicago gangster Earl J. Jaime Weiss. He carried out several attempts on the crime boss's life, including a shooting involving 10 moving automobiles. Despite his derogatory nickname, he was also a devout Catholic who despised prostitution. In 2009, two puppeteers placed $10,000 in coins inside a chest, hid it in New York, and posted clues on YouTube. 3 years later, after no one found it, they dug up the treasure and donated it to people affected by Hurricane Sandy. Atalanta was a heroine in Greek mythology who offered to marry any suitor who could outrun her in a race. But she could defeat any man in a race until Hippomenes received help from Aphrodite to beat her in the competition. Gene Hackman was reluctant to star in Unforgiven in 1992 because his daughters were upset about the number of violent movies he had appeared in. Nevertheless, Eastwood managed to convince him. There is an abandoned Six Flags park in New Orleans that was closed after suffering severe damage from Hurricane Katrina. It has been used to film several movies, including Percy Jackson, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and Jurassic World. Aroldis Chapman's 105-mile-per-hour pitch is not the fastest of all time. When Nolan Ryan played, pitches were not recorded until they were 10 feet from home plate. So with the corresponding adjustments, if it were thrown today, Ryan's 100.9-mile-per-hour pitch in the ninth inning in 1974 would have registered at approximately 108.5 miles per hour. In 1989, a man bought a painting for $4 at a flea market, mainly because he liked the frame. He discovered a document behind the canvas that turned out to be an official copy from the first printing of the Declaration of Independence. Only 23 copies were known to exist. He sold it at auction for $2.42 million in 1991. Guinness already owned the trademark for a harp symbol with the sound box on the left when the Republic of Ireland became an independent country, so Ireland's passports, currency, and official government documents use a harp facing the opposite direction. In Japan, time used to be measured so that there were always 6 hours of night and 6 hours of day, meaning that the length of an hour changed between winter and summer. Interestingly, the Romans did the same thing, except with a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. The Apollo 15 postal covers scandal occurred when the astronauts carried around 400 unauthorized postal covers into space and onto the surface of the moon aboard the Falcon lunar module. All three received a payment or bribe of $7,000 each from stamp dealers, were discovered, and never traveled to space again. The Romans had fast food. In the ancient Greco-Roman world, the Thermopylaeum was a cookshop and commercial establishment where ready-to-eat food could be purchased. The band Cage the Elephant got its name when a man with mental health problems approached the lead singer, hugged him, and repeatedly said that he had to cage the elephant. Mo Berg was a baseball player who learned 7 languages at Princeton and earned a law degree from Columbia. He worked as a spy in Europe during World War II and was ordered to attend a Heisenberg lecture and even shoot him if he determined that the Germans were close to building the bomb. He determined that they were not. Nutrition labeling on food was not mandatory in the United States until 1994 and was considered controversial at the time. Jocelyn Bell Burnell, who was an astrophysicist, discovered pulsars in 1967, but her supervisor not only received credit for the discovery, he also won a Nobel Prize for it. In 2005, Sony sold music compact discs that installed a hidden program without notifying users. In other words, a rootkit. When this became public, Sony released an uninstaller, but required customers to provide an email address to be used for marketing purposes. The uninstaller itself exposed users to arbitrary code execution. South Korea currently has a lower fertility rate than Japan. The country has recorded one of the lowest birth rates in the world for years, far below the approximately 2 children per woman needed to keep a population stable without immigration. Associated factors include the high cost of housing and education, long working hours, delayed marriage, and difficulties balancing child rearing with professional development. The South Korean government has allocated enormous amounts of money to subsidies, childcare services, and family assistance. Although recent signs of recovery in births have been recorded, population aging and future population decline continue to be major challenges. The YMCA not only used to offer dormitory housing at most of its locations in the United States, but it had more than 100,000 rooms in the 1940s. That was more than any hotel chain had at the time. Matt Groening named the main members of the Simpson family, except for Bart, after members of his own family. For example, Homer Groening is Matt's father. Wastewater treatment plants are not currently designed to remove pharmaceutical drugs from water. Estrogen and other chemicals have been shown to behave in ways that produce feminizing effects in male fish and other aquatic life. A woman named Cougar Annie gave birth to 11 children, outlived 4 husbands, and became known for reportedly shooting and killing around 70 cougars over the course of her life. The monarch of Cambodia does not inherit the throne, but is instead chosen by a special council called the Royal Council of the Throne. When warned of a probable missile launch against the United States, crisis rooms at the Pentagon and Strategic Command have 1 minute to inform the president, who then has only about 6 minutes to decide whether to respond and how to do so. In 2013, an investigation was conducted on the drink Capri Sun, in which it was filtered through a vacuum system to see what remained on the filter paper. Researchers identified 5 species of fungi and noted that because the drink contains no preservatives, this allows many fungi to survive. In Japanese folklore, there are ghosts that come to cut your hair in the middle of the night. They usually leave you with a very bad haircut. Sometimes they do this as a warning that you are about to marry a demon, and in that way, they protect you. Between the 1920s and the 1990s, around 500,000 American prisoners underwent state-approved plastic surgery in an attempt to rehabilitate repeat offenders, based on the idea that physical appearance influenced the likelihood of committing crimes again. Only the largest ships in the United States Navy have a captain. Smaller frigates and other ships have commanders. George Lazenby was offered a 7-movie contract to play James Bond, but he played the character only once because his agent, in his infinite wisdom, convinced him that the secret agent would be archaic in the liberated 1970s. The song The Lion Sleeps Tonight, sung by Timon and Pumbaa in the original The Lion King, led to a major lawsuit. Originally composed by Solomon Linda in 1939, his family won a royalty settlement in 2006 worth $1.6 million. In 2015, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission decided to allow the state's first limited black bear hunt since the 1990s. However, the hunt was abruptly canceled after hunters killed 295 bears out of a limit of 320 in just 2 days. The common plastic garden chair is called the monoblock chair and was once banned in Switzerland for polluting the urban landscape. Its name comes from its manufacturing method. The entire structure is produced as a single piece through injection molding, usually using polypropylene. This system makes it possible to manufacture enormous quantities quickly, with little material and at a relatively low cost. In addition, the chairs can be stacked, resist moisture, and are easy to transport, characteristics that helps them spread across virtually the entire planet. Since the late 20th century, the monoblock has become one of the most recognizable industrial objects in the world, found in homes, restaurants, beaches, stadiums, and public spaces across completely different cultures. If you carve something into a tree, it will remain at the same height 50 years later. Elvis Presley had a strong fascination with feet. He had women's feet inspected before he would even meet them. The Mission Impossible theme song is famous for its 2 long notes followed by 2 short notes. These notes are the Morse code signals for the letters M and I. Illinois contains approximately 1/8 of all nuclear waste in the United States, by far the largest amount of any state, with around 10,000 tons. It is possible that Alzheimer's disease can be transmitted between humans in rare medical accidents. Exceptional cases have been documented involving old medical treatments in which patients received growth hormone extracted from the pituitary glands of cadavers. Decades later, some developed accumulations of beta-amyloid protein and symptoms consistent with a form of early-onset Alzheimer's disease. Researchers believe that certain abnormal proteins may have been accidentally introduced during those procedures and triggered progressive changes in the brain. The United States National Solar Observatory requires an amount of ice equivalent to a swimming pool to be added to its tanks every night so that coolant can be distributed throughout the observatory. The heat is intense enough to rapidly melt metal at the focal point of the telescope mirrors. In the United States, 60 people die each year in accidents inside cold storage rooms. These industrial spaces can reach temperatures far below freezing and are used to store food, medications, and other heat-sensitive products. Becoming trapped inside one can quickly cause hypothermia, especially if clothing does not provide enough insulation. For this reason, modern facilities often include mechanisms for opening doors from the inside, alarm systems, and safety procedures for workers. In addition to extreme cold, some refrigerated warehouses present risks associated with machinery, slippery surfaces, and industrial refrigeration systems. Many early telephone lines were party lines, meaning that anyone who picked up the phone could listen to the conversation. In fact, customers had to pay an additional monthly fee to switch to a private line. The global positioning system, despite being free for worldwide use, costs around $2 million a day to operate and maintain. This budget covers satellite launches and system maintenance, funded through the United States tax revenue system. Production of the Ford Model T reached nearly 10,000 automobiles a day in 1925, and it is generally considered the first low-cost, mass-produced automobile, putting car travel within reach of middle-class Americans. Devram is an internal deodorant that eliminates the odor of stool and flatulence. Its active ingredient is bismuth subgalate, a compound used to reduce odors produced in the digestive system. Instead of working like conventional deodorants, it acts inside the body by reducing the intensity of certain compounds responsible for unpleasant odors. The product has existed for decades and is sold in chewable tablets and capsules. It has also been used by some people with ostomies, for whom controlling intestinal odors can make certain everyday activities and the management of collection bags easier. Axolotls are capable of regenerating their limbs, tail, gills, brain, and even their heart within a few weeks. When they suffer an injury, nearby cells can form a structure called a blastema, from which the reconstruction of lost tissues begins. In a limb, they can regrow bones, muscles, blood vessels, nerves, and skin following virtually the same original organization. In addition, they regenerate parts of the spinal cord and certain regions of the brain without producing the extensive scarring that would limit this process in mammals. This ability has made the axolotl one of the most studied animals for understanding how human tissue repair might be stimulated in the future. A study found that 25% of Labrador retrievers and 66% of flat-coated retrievers carry a genetic mutation that can cause weight gain. Dogs with this gene face the double problem of feeling constantly hungry while burning fewer calories. The Labrador Retriever has the highest levels of obesity among dog breeds. A young Thomas Edison helped another inventor, Samuel Laws, design telegraph machines. He expected to be paid a few $100s, but Laws instead gave him $40,000, allowing Edison to finance a new research laboratory and factory. There, he assembled 300 employees and developed 50 inventions. Showcase or prestige cars are built with the intention of representing a brand and improving public perception of it, with little or no intention of making a profit from them. Most major brands have them, for example, Dodge's Viper and Ford's GT series. An American law firm set traps on torrent file-sharing websites such as the Pirate Bay and then sued people who downloaded from them, but the matter eventually reached the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The Pirate Bay cooperated with federal authorities, resulting in prison time for the corrupt lawyers. Humans are the most sensitive to castor beans. It takes only 1 to kill an adult human, 11 to kill a dog, and a massive dose of 80 to kill a duck. The seeds contain ricin, which is approximately 6,000 times more poisonous than cyanide. The name of the band NSYNC is spelled using the last letters of the first names of the group's members. James Madison was the smallest president of the United States. He stood 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed just over 100 pounds. John Walsh, host of America's Most Wanted, became an advocate for missing children after his son Adam was abducted and lost his life in 1981. His activism helped drive changes in laws and contributed to the creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In addition, his show helped locate and capture more than 12 fugitives. Although the feud between Frank Sinatra and Marlon Brando was reportedly mild at the beginning of the production of Guys and Dolls, Brando began to hate Sinatra because Sinatra called him Mumbles to make him angry. So Brando pretended to forget his lines during one scene, forcing Sinatra to repeatedly eat during the takes. Pocahontas had a son with her second husband, John Rolfe. That son had a daughter named Jane Rolfe. In 1887, a book was published that revealed that Pocahontas had thousands of descendants. That figure has been updated more recently to reveal more than 30,000 documented descendants. Homicide clearance rates in the United States declined from a peak of 93% in 1962 to 64% in 1994. The rate then stabilized with some variation over the following 25 years, and there is currently no satisfactory explanation for the initial decline or why it ended the way it did. Elvis was a black belt in karate. He began practicing this martial art during his military service in the late 1950s and continued training for much of his life. He studied under several instructors and eventually earned advanced black belt ranks. Karate became one of his greatest passions outside of music, to the point that he incorporated martial arts-inspired movements into his stage performances. He also practiced while on tour and even gave private demonstrations. His interest was so deep that he even financed a training center for one of his instructors. Benjamin Franklin used to sit naked for extended periods to take air baths. In 1985, an Army supply employee at Fort Carson, Colorado, accidentally ordered a $28,000 anchor instead of a $6 lamp because of a typing error while transcribing the order number. No one in the supply chain questioned why a mechanized unit needed a 10-ton anchor until it arrived. A stray dog, adopted by an air defense patrol during World War II, saved more than 100 people despite having no training. The dog earned the Dickin Medal and inspired the training of search and rescue dogs. 3% of people in the United States will experience a psychotic episode at some point in their lives. During one of these episodes, a person may experience hallucinations, delusions, or difficulty distinguishing certain perceptions from reality. Episodes may occur briefly or be associated with different disorders, and not everyone who experiences one develops a chronic psychotic illness. Factors such as genetic predisposition, certain substances, situations of intense stress, and severe sleep disturbances can influence their onset. Early care is especially important, as receiving timely evaluation and treatment can significantly improve outcomes and reduce future complications. Although the United States Coast Guard is the second smallest branch of the American military in terms of personnel, the service by itself constitutes the 12th largest naval force in the world. Robert Kearns invented the intermittent windshield wiper system, only to have his invention stolen by the big three automobile manufacturers. Fortunately, he sued them and won. Big Ben has a room that serves as a prison. The last time it was used was in 1880, when a newly elected member of parliament, who was an atheist, refused to swear an oath to the Queen. The first movie about the sinking of the Titanic was released just 31 days after the disaster. It starred Dorothy Gibson, an actual survivor of the event, who co-wrote the screenplay and played a fictionalized version of herself. Unfortunately, the movie is now considered lost, as the last known copies were destroyed in a fire. In 2013, a man attempted to dribble a soccer ball from Seattle to Brazil to promote a charity. Unfortunately, he was struck and killed by a truck only 250 miles into his 10,000-mile journey. Recruitment for the British Army's Gurkha unit is extremely competitive, accepting only 230 recruits out of 28,000 applicants. All recruitment takes place in Nepalese villages, and candidates must participate in a 2-mile uphill race while carrying 77 pounds of rocks in a basket. Most people can see their own white blood cells moving through their retinas. The phenomenon is known as the blue field entoptic phenomenon and can be observed by looking at a bright blue surface, especially a clear sky. Small bright dots appear to move rapidly along curved paths. They are not objects floating inside the eye. They correspond to white blood cells passing through the tiny capillaries located in front of the retina. Because these cells allow blue light to pass through differently than the red blood cells surrounding them, they create brief points of increased brightness. Their movements can even follow the rhythm of the pulse as they circulate through the blood vessels. There is an international competition for writing obfuscated code. Contestants are judged on the aesthetics of unreadable source code, such as shaping it like a Christmas tree. but the code must still be able to compile and run. Airlines in the United States are required by law to refund a ticket within 24 hours of purchase, regardless of whether the ticket type was refundable or not. In-N-Out Burger temporarily opens pop-up stands in countries where it does not plan to open a permanent location, solely to obtain trademark rights there. It has done this multiple times in Australia, where customers may wait for hours for burgers that sell out in 30 minutes. The Chinese Communist Party, under Mao's rule, banned bodybuilding in 1953, calling it an unproductive and narcissistic pursuit of beauty. The ban was lifted 30 years later. Apple actually had a zero-click vulnerability that went undetected for 4 years and was largely unreported by major media outlets. Unknown attackers managed to gain an unprecedented level of access by exploiting a vulnerability in an undocumented hardware feature that very few people, if anyone, outside Apple and microprocessor suppliers such as ARM Holdings knew about. In Germany, a driver's license costs more than $2,000 after a minimum of 25 to 45 hours of professional instruction plus 12 hours of theory. Obtaining one involves attending a driving school, completing theoretical and practical training, receiving first aid instruction, taking a vision test, and passing official examinations. Part of the practical training includes mandatory sessions on the Autobahn, nighttime driving, and driving on rural roads. The final cost can increase considerably when the student needs additional lessons or has to retake one of the exams. Germany is also known for requiring rigorous preparation because of the complexity of its road network and the high speeds allowed on certain sections of the Autobahn. A lost Sesame Street episode from 1976, which was reportedly pulled from broadcast for being too frightening for children, resurfaced on the internet in 2019. It starred Margaret Hamilton, who reprised her role as the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. Cars must have at least 3/4 of a tank of fuel to leave Singapore in order to prevent drivers from buying cheaper gasoline in Malaysia and avoiding Singapore's fuel tax. When Star Wars officially opened in theaters on May 25, 1977, George Lucas was so busy approving the movie's advertising campaigns that he forgot it was opening that day. That same night, he went out to dinner in Los Angeles with his wife and saw crowds of people lining up to see the movie. A finance employee at a multinational company was tricked into paying $25 million to scammers who used deepfake technology to impersonate the company's chief financial officer during a conference video call, which included several other staff members who were, in fact, fake digital recreations. A 39-year-old woman named Rhoda Abbott was the only woman aboard the Titanic who survived after falling into the freezing water. All the other female survivors were lowered into lifeboats, making her the only woman aboard to survive after 2:05 in the morning. She also lost her 2 teenage sons in the chaos. There was a math question on the 1982 SAT exams that absolutely every student answered incorrectly. The question was so paradoxical that the test creators themselves became confused and failed to include the correct answer among the multiple choice options. All 300,000 exams had to be rescored. Philanthropist and engineer Avery Fisher was motivated to start his own company after identifying a way to save his employer $10,000 a year, only to be immediately denied a $5 a week raise. In 2023, the so-called Great Kentucky Hoard was discovered, a find consisting of more than 800 coins from the era of the American Civil War, most of them gold. The discovery renewed interest in stories about lost gold reserves from the war. The person who found the treasure kept both their identity and the exact location of the discovery secret. According to United States Census data, New York State in 2023 had both the largest population decline in raw numbers, with nearly 102,000 residents, and the highest rate of population decline at 0.5% among the 50 states. The current year in North Korea is 115. This is because they use the Juche calendar, and year 1 began on Kim Il-sung's birthday, April 15, 1912. Mariah Carey bought Marilyn Monroe's childhood piano for $662,500 in 1999. When Marilyn's mother was institutionalized, Marilyn was sent to an orphanage and the piano was sold. It took Marilyn years of searching to find the piano and buy it back. Mariah wants it to be placed in a museum. 2 of the tallest people in the world in 1871 got married, Martin Van Buren Bates and Anna Haining. The former stood 7 feet 9 inches tall and weighed 475 pounds, while the latter stood 7 feet 11 inches tall and weighed 212 pounds. Kentucky bluegrass is a non-native species that was introduced from Europe by the Spanish Empire. Although it is now deeply associated with the landscapes of Kentucky and other regions of North America, its history on the continent is more complex than its name suggests. The species, scientifically known as Poa pratensis, was widely distributed throughout Europe and arrived in the Americas during the colonial period, probably through different routes and colonizers. Its seeds could accidentally travel mixed with hay, animal feed, and other materials intended for livestock. Once established, it thrived in grasslands and disturbed areas. Its ability to spread through underground stems, called rhizomes, allows it to quickly form the dense green surfaces for which it is known today. The heat from the pyroclastic flow produced by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius was so intense that their brains became vitrified, meaning they turned into glass. It was the first time anything like this had ever been observed. The discovery was made in human remains found in Herculaneum, one of the cities buried during the eruption in the year 79. Researchers identified black, shiny fragments inside the skull of one of the victims. Analyses revealed proteins associated with brain tissue and exceptionally well-preserved neural structures. For vitrification to occur, the tissue would have undergone extremely rapid heating followed by sudden cooling, a process capable of transforming part of the organic material into a glass-like substance. Retro Studios' idea for an open-world Metroid game in which Samus would receive rewards for captured criminals was rejected because no one at Nintendo knew or understood what a bounty hunter was, despite having classified her as one since 1986. In Bhutan, people do not recognize, and many do not know, their individual birthdays. Everyone in the country turns 1 year older together on January 1st. This practice is mainly associated with generations and communities where precise birth records historically did not exist, especially in rural areas. When the exact date was unknown, January 1st could be used administratively as the date of birth, resulting in many people officially sharing that day. However, Bhutanese people with modern records can know and celebrate their actual birthdays. For generations, age could also be calculated using traditional calendars and family or religious events, rather than relying exclusively on official birth certificates. Scientists at Australia's most famous radio telescope were puzzled for 17 years by bursts of signals coming from the direction of distant galaxies before finally discovering that the source was someone at the facility opening the door of a microwave oven while it was running, causing interference. A luxurious apartment in Paris was abandoned in 1942. It became a time capsule that remained untouched until 2010, when it was finally rediscovered. It is estimated that there is a 70% chance that an earthquake with a magnitude of approximately 7 will affect Tokyo within the next 30 years. The metropolitan region lies near the boundaries of several tectonic plates, a configuration that has produced major earthquakes throughout its history. One of the most devastating was the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923. Because of the ongoing risk, Japan has strict earthquake-resistant building codes, early warning systems, and regular drills. Many modern buildings incorporate dampers and isolation systems capable of significantly reducing the movement transmitted to the structure during a powerful earthquake. Richard Simmons was the subject of extensive speculation about his personal life over the years, but he always chose to keep those aspects private and never made public statements about them. Lady Gaga is the first woman in history to win an Oscar, a Grammy, a BAFTA, and a Golden Globe in a single year. This happened in 2019 for her performance in A Star is Born. Madonna turned down a role in The Matrix, which she considers one of the biggest regrets of her career. Chinstrap penguins take more than 10,000 microsleeps a day so they can remain vigilant and protect their eggs. During the breeding season, these birds may sleep for only a few seconds at a time while accumulating around 11 hours of sleep each day. Research conducted in Antarctic colonies recorded microsleeps lasting approximately 4 seconds on average. This strategy allows them to rest without remaining disconnected for long periods while incubating. In crowded colonies, they must constantly deal with noise, the movements of other penguins, and threats such as brown skuas, birds capable of taking advantage of any opportunity to attack unprotected eggs or chicks. Heat kills more people than hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods combined. In the United States, extreme heat ranks among the deadliest weather-related hazards and can affect people without causing visible damage to buildings or roads. Prolonged heat waves are especially dangerous when nighttime temperatures remain high because the body has less time to recover. High humidity also makes it more difficult for sweat to evaporate, reducing one of the body's primary natural cooling mechanisms. Cities can make the problem worse through the urban heat island effect, as asphalt, concrete, and buildings store energy during the day and slowly release it at night. The Belle Island boom of 1978 was a mysterious and extremely powerful explosion that occurred on Belle Island, Canada. The blast could be heard up to about 62 miles away. The energy released was so powerful that Vela satellites, used by the United States government to detect nuclear explosions, recorded the event. In 1994, a man in Oklahoma was sentenced to 22 years in prison. He appealed for a new trial and, after being convicted again, was given an additional sentence of 9,000 years. Gotham City is canonically located in New Jersey. Abraham Lincoln was so convinced that he was going to lose the 1864 election that he asked Frederick Douglass to guide scouts south to free as many enslaved people as possible before the new president took office. In 2016, two would-be thieves dressed themselves in aluminum foil from head to toe during an attempted bank robbery in Brazil because they believed it would prevent alarm detectors from detecting them. However, what they failed to notice was that the internal security cameras captured every one of their movements. The reason Mr. Rogers told his viewers that he was feeding his fish, even though he could be seen doing it in every episode, was that he received a letter from a 5-year-old blind girl who was worried that he was not feeding them. Because of this, he began saying out loud that he was feeding them. There was a famous Japanese television show in which contestants who were passionate baseball fans were individually locked in small rooms for an entire baseball season. If their team won, they received dinner that night. If their team lost, the lights were turned off until the team's next victory. Australia is the lowest and flattest continent in the world, with an average elevation of only about 1,000 feet, because it lies near the center of a tectonic plate. Unlike regions located along active tectonic boundaries, Australia lacks large, young mountain ranges comparable to the Andes or the Himalayas. Much of its mountainous terrain is extremely ancient and has undergone hundreds of millions of years of erosion. Its highest point on the mainland, Mount Kosciuszko, reaches just over 7,000 feet. The interior is dominated by vast plains, plateaus, and enormous sedimentary basins. Even so, the continent experiences occasional earthquakes because of stresses that accumulate within the Australian plate itself. All the writings of the Greek philosopher Leucippus have been lost except for one sentence. Nothing happens at random, but everything happens for a reason and by necessity. The Aztecs had 18 festivals each year, 17 of which included human sacrifices. In addition to heart extraction, they used a variety of other methods such as drowning, starvation, decapitation, burning, beating, throwing people from heights, forced gladiatorial combat, and shooting them with arrows. Some of the earliest Chinese ammunition consisted of black powder inside a bamboo tube along with a live rat. When fired toward the enemy, the burning rats created major psychological effects that frightened enemy soldiers. Multiple studies have found that 1 additional inch of height can equal $1,000 additional per year in earnings for both men and women. Rick James had a brief relationship with Linda Blair, the star of The Exorcist. When she terminated a pregnancy without telling him, it deeply affected him, inspiring him to record the song Cold-Blooded about her. James Cameron offered Matt Damon 10% of Avatar, which would have earned the actor more than $250 million. Michael was the most frequently given male name every year between 1954 and 1998, except in 1960, when it was David. It fell out of the top 5 names in 2011 for the first time since 1949. One night in 2020, Eminem woke up to the sound of a man named Matthew Hughes breaking into his kitchen with a paving stone. According to reports, he told Eminem that he was there to kill him, but the rapper managed to convince him to leave the house and surrender to police custody. He was sentenced to 524 days of time served and 5 years of probation. The Great Smoky Mountains are home to a temperate rainforest in a section of the mountains near Gatlinburg, Tennessee. On a global scale, this is a very uncommon ecosystem that is not found in many other locations on Earth. Cigarette consumption in the United States peaked in 1963, with an annual rate of 4,345 cigarettes per capita, averaging nearly 12 cigarettes a day for every person in the country. Silphium is an unidentified, extinct plant whose exact identity is unclear and heavily debated, and it was used as a contraceptive by the ancient Greeks and Romans. The plant was also used as a seasoning, medicine, perfume, and aphrodisiac. Vanessa Lawrence, a woman who was on the 91st floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center when Flight 11 crashed into it, survived with only a cut on her foot. Microsoft skipped version 13 of Microsoft Office because of concerns about triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. After Office 12, corresponding to Office 2007, the next version was internally assigned the number 14 and was commercially released as Office 2010. Superstition surrounding the number 13 also appears in hotels, hospitals, and buildings that omit that number from rooms or floors. Interestingly, Microsoft avoided another number again years later with Windows, going directly from Windows 8.1 to Windows 10. Although in that case, the decision was related to commercial and technical reasons, not fear of a number considered unlucky. John von Neumann worked on the first atomic bomb and the first computer, developed the formulas of quantum mechanics, and described genetic self-replication before the discovery of DNA. He even founded the field of game theory, among many other accomplishments. He has been called the smartest man in history. Walt Disney came up with the modern ski trail designations, such as the Green Circle, Blue Square, and Black Diamond. In recorded history, the deadliest tropical cyclone, with more than 300,000 deaths in 1970, and the deadliest tornado, with 13 deaths in 1989, occurred in the country of Bangladesh. Coca-Cola released a German advertisement to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Fanta's founding in 1940 in Germany, before the advertisement was withdrawn. The advertisement stated that it wanted to bring back the feeling of the good old times. In 1976, author Marian Engel wrote a book called Bear, described as one of the most controversial books in Canadian history. The book centers on a woman who enters into a relationship with a bear. DoorDash illegally sold user information and reached a settlement requiring it to pay $375,000. The highest wind speeds ever recorded came from the tornado that struck Oklahoma on May 3, 1999. Measurements placed the wind speed at approximately 301 plus or minus 20 miles per hour. Bernie Madoff, who ran a $50 billion Ponzi scheme, did not make a single trade within his investment fund. Between 2012 and 2016, at least 147 visitors drowned in Hawaii, averaging nearly one per week while taking part in common tourist activities such as swimming and snorkeling. The movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Was the first feature film to be entirely color-corrected using digital methods. Released in 2000 and directed by the Coen brothers, it used this process to dramatically transform the appearance of the images after filming. Cinematographer Roger Deakins wanted the green landscapes of Mississippi to take on dry, yellowish, golden tones that evoked old photographs and an atmosphere characteristic of the Great Depression era. To achieve this, the entire movie was digitally scanned and adjusted scene by scene, anticipating a technique that would later become a standard tool in modern filmmaking. In 2012, LL Cool J fractured the nose, jaw, and ribs of a man accused of breaking into his home. His family was sleeping when his home security alarm went off at 1 in the morning, prompting LL Cool J to take action. After catching the man, he restrained him until authorities arrived. When Henry Ford's River Rouge factory became fully operational in 1922, it consumed as much water each day as the cities of Detroit, Cincinnati, and New Orleans combined. The massive industrial complex in Dearborn was designed to control virtually the entire process of manufacturing an automobile in a single location. It had blast furnaces, steel mills, foundries, power plants, its own railroad tracks, and docks. Raw materials such as iron ore, coal, and rubber arrived at the complex to be progressively transformed into parts and finished vehicles. Research is currently being conducted into genetically modifying humans for space and life on other planets. One method is epigenome engineering, which would target genes that are advantageous for space. Another method involves combining DNA from other species, such as tardigrades, with human cells to make humans better adapted to space. Arnold Schwarzenegger's salary for Terminator 2: Judgment Day was paid largely through the purchase of a $12.75 million Gulfstream III airplane. Owen Wilson was cast in the role of Rick Peck in Tropic Thunder. However, Matthew McConaughey replaced him after Wilson left the movie due to a medical situation in August 2007. A 2017 study found that only 73 attacks by wild polar bears on humans occurred between 1872 and 2014, resulting in 20 human deaths and 63 injuries. The best estimates currently available suggest that around 212,582 metric tons of gold have been mined throughout history, approximately two-thirds of which have been extracted since 1950. Since gold is virtually indestructible, this means that almost all of this metal still exists in one form or another. NASA lost a $330 million Mars orbiter in 1999, immediately before it was supposed to enter orbit around Mars, because one of the American companies under contract used imperial units instead of the metric system. During the casting process for Armageddon in 1998, Michael Bay was not impressed at all with Ben Affleck's screen test, calling him a nerd. Jerry Bruckheimer convinced Bay that Affleck would become a star, but Affleck was required to lose weight, get a tan, and have dental veneers fitted before filming. John Travolta was initially considered for the role of Forrest Gump, but turned it down, opening the door for Tom Hanks. Bill Murray was also considered. Joe Pesci was a candidate to play Lieutenant Dan. Dave Chappelle turned down the role of Benjamin Buford Blue because he thought the movie would be a failure. Of the 50 counties with the highest alcohol consumption in the United States, 41 are in Wisconsin. Between 2008 and 2010, the Iraqi government was scammed into spending more than $40 million on fake bomb detectors, the ADE 651 model. During the period known as the Great Dying, approximately 251.9 million years ago, 57% of Earth's biological families, including 81% of marine life and 70% of land vertebrates, became extinct. The probable cause was volcanic activity that made the oceans toxic and released poisonous gases such as sulfur dioxide into the air. All residents of Chile's permanent Antarctic settlement, Villa Las Estrellas, must undergo surgery to have their appendix removed as a precaution because of the limited availability of medical services on the frozen continent. Life expectancy at birth probably averaged only around 10 years for most of human history. In 2022, Crypto.com accidentally refunded more than $10 million to a customer. They mistakenly entered the account number into the refund amount field. It took them 7 months to notice, and the recipient was arrested and spent more than 200 days in custody. Thuy Trang, the actress who played the original Yellow Ranger, was one of the Vietnamese refugees who left Vietnam by boat after the fall of Saigon at the end of the Vietnam War. Nunavut is the only province or territory in Canada that does not have a single Walmart store. Chinese Emperor Helion Bobo imposed extreme standards on his workers. If an arrow managed to penetrate the armor maker was executed. If it failed to do so, the arrow maker was executed. When he was building a fortress, if a wedge could be driven 1 inch into the wall, the builder of the wall was executed. A 2013 study found that chopping down trees produces a greater increase in testosterone than a directly competitive activity such as soccer. Chopping trees produced a 46.8% increase, while soccer produced only a 30.1% increase. Used diapers can replace up to 8% of the sand used in concrete and mortar for a small, single-story building. The character Raymond from the Oscar-winning movie Rain Man was based on a real-life savant, Kim Peek. He could read the left and right pages of a book simultaneously and had an absolute memory of more than 12,000 books. Osama bin Laden's father had more than 20 wives and fathered more than 50 children. Wolverine almost made a cameo appearance in Spider-Man 1. Hugh Jackman traveled to New York to film a scene, but the idea was abandoned when the production team realized that they had lost the Wolverine costume. Polaroid camera founder Edwin Land built a company that conducted around $1.4 billion in business worldwide in 1979. He never diversified into other businesses, never sold the company to another corporation, and never borrowed money on a long-term basis. A couple spontaneously wrote a letter to Buckingham Palace inviting Queen Elizabeth II to their wedding, and she unexpectedly showed up. A 2022 survey of 3,000 adults and children found that only 27% of children between the ages of 6 and 16 said they regularly play outside their homes, while 71% of the post-war generation said they did so when they were children. Joyce Vincent was a 38-year-old woman who died in her London apartment while watching television. Her body was not discovered until nearly 3 years later, when officials arrived to repossess the apartment because of unpaid rent. Until the 1950s, France served alcohol with children's school lunches. There have been multiple attempts to privatize the National Weather Service and charge for weather data that is currently in the public domain. The fastest badminton shot ever recorded reached a speed of 351.1 miles per hour. That is nearly 124 miles per hour faster than the fastest speed recorded by a Formula One car. The British Library suffered a major cyber attack in October 2023 that disrupted much of its digital services for months. Although the institution has progressively restored most of its systems and online collections, full recovery has been a lengthy process because of the scale of the attack. The Sam Key Building, recognized by Guinness World Records as the narrowest commercial building in the world, was built after its owner bet a business partner that he could make use of the 5-foot-wide strip of land he had left after the city expropriated 79% of his property without compensating him. Paul McCartney, Phil Collins, and Michael Jackson are the only musicians who have sold more than 100 million records, both as solo artists and as members of a band. The Panini album for the Qatar 2022 World Cup contains a total of 638 stickers, and despite having special holographic stickers and so-called super rare ones, all stickers are actually produced in equal quantities, and the chance of getting a popular player like Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo is the same as for any other player. Crows, in addition to being very intelligent birds, also have exceptional memory and can recognize human faces for years, allowing them to distinguish between friendly people and those who pose a threat. They can even pass this information on to the next generations of crows. When you lose weight, 84% of the fat that is lost turns into carbon dioxide and leaves the body through the lungs during breathing. The largest ships use seawater ballast tanks to maintain stability, which are later released thousands of miles from where the water was taken, transporting organisms to places where they can destabilize marine ecosystems. In addition to environmental damage, this causes economic losses of billions of dollars. The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 had a lateral explosion, something very unusual in volcanoes. This explosion occurred because the north side of the mountain weakened due to magma buildup, forming a massive dome that suddenly collapsed. The landslide it triggered is the largest recorded in history. It destroyed more than 600 square kilometers of forest in minutes. Oxygen has no color or smell in its gaseous state, but when it is in liquid or solid form, it has a slight blue color. Liquid oxygen is one of the components of rocket fuel. Astronaut Scott Kelly became younger than his twin brother Mark Kelly, who is also an astronaut, even though he was born 6 minutes earlier. This is because he spent 1 year on a mission aboard the International Space Station at very high speed, and due to Einstein's theory of relativity, time passed more slowly for him by a difference of milliseconds each day, which accumulated into a difference of just over 6 minutes. There are Antarctic dollars. However, they are only collectible bills with no legal value in Antarctica or anywhere else in the world. They are sold by a website that also offers fictitious currency and insignias from other places, and currently, in 2024, they are not accepting new orders because they could not keep up with demand. In 1 spoonful of soil, there are more microorganisms than people in the entire world. Soil contains the greatest concentration of biomass on the planet. According to a popular legend, the first time potato chips were cooked was in 1853, when a customer at a restaurant in New York sent his French fries back to the kitchen because they were cut too thick. The chef, annoyed, sliced them as thin as possible and added a lot of salt. To his surprise, the customers liked them very much. Graphene is the thinnest two-dimensional material that exists and is approximately 200 times stronger than steel. It is also one of the most conductive materials known on Earth, excelling in both electrical and thermal conductivity. By two-dimensional, they mean that its thickness is only 1 atom. It is not literally two-dimensional. A study from the University of Cambridge states that humans evolved together with plants and fungi. It is estimated that at least 1% of our DNA was acquired from plants and fungi. For the movie The Little Mermaid from 2023, the hair of actress Halle Bailey was made entirely digital. The underwater scenes were filmed in front of a blue screen, and Bailey wore a cap with special markers. Later, digital effects artists added the water effect and the hair to give it greater realism. This same method was also used for the movie Aquaman. The then Maharaja of the princely state of Alwad in India, named Jai Singh Prabhakar, visited the Rolls-Royce store in London during his first visit to the United Kingdom in 1920. There, the salesperson implied that he could not afford the luxury cars. So, in revenge, he bought 10, sent them to India, and ordered that they be used as garbage trucks. Shortly afterward, Rolls-Royce sent him an apology and 6 more cars as a gift. However, this story is not confirmed and may be only a legend. Flamingos are not actually pink. Their feathers are gray, but they have that characteristic color because they get it from their shrimp diet, which contains a natural pink pigment called canthaxanthin. Flamingos in zoos must be given this substance artificially so they appear pink. There is a wave that never stops at the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil, created by the collision of freshwater and saltwater. This phenomenon is known as the pororoca and attracts tourists every year, especially surfing enthusiasts who can ride the same wave for minutes without falling. In Finland, mothers who are about to have a baby are given a baby box as part of a social program. This package contains essential items for a newborn, such as clothing, diapers, and hygiene products, and the box itself can serve as a crib. These packages have been distributed since 1938. Almost 70% of United States citizens have never left their country. Americans think that since the United States is so vast and has so much variety, they do not need to go anywhere else in their lifetime. Astronomers have a theory that the spiral shape of the galaxy where our solar system is located, the Milky Way, is due to the fact that 2 billion years ago it absorbed a dwarf galaxy. Every day, around 100 tons of material fall to Earth directly from space, but the vast majority of this mass arrives in the form of dust-sized particles. Sometimes rabbits sleep with their eyes open. You can tell because their noses do not move. This is a defense mechanism that allows them to quickly detect predators, since they are prey animals in nature. A speech had already been prepared in case the Apollo mission failed in 1969, and astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were stranded on the moon. In 2020, a YouTube video went viral showing Richard Nixon delivering that speech using deepfake technology and computer-generated voice to demonstrate what that scenario would have been like. The NASA Vehicle Assembly Building is so large that around 10,000 tons of air conditioning equipment are needed to prevent rain clouds from forming inside on days with high humidity. When a cat walks toward you with its tail pointing upward, it means it is excited to see you. It is a sign of trust, friendly greeting, and comfort in your presence. In 1949, a French film director named Willy Rosier challenged a critic to a sword duel after the critic spoke poorly of one of his movies. He did win the duel in front of journalists and photographers. The film, called 56 Rue Pigalle, was a success, and when it was released on DVD years later, the duel footage was included in the extras. The journalist was not seriously injured, suffering only a small cut on the arm. The British make so much tea after the television series EastEnders ends in the evenings that an increase in electricity consumption has been observed across the grid in the United Kingdom due to electric kettles. It is so significant that backup power stations are kept ready at that time. Halocephalobus mephisto is a species of nematode discovered in 2011, which would be a normal animal if it were not the species found living at the greatest depth. It was discovered in water-filled cracks in gold mines in South Africa at depths of up to 5,249.34 feet below Earth's surface. It was nicknamed the devil worm. I do not think any other nickname would have suited it better. Treasure hunter Tommy Gregory Thompson discovered, along with his team, the ship SS Central America in 1988, which sank in 1857, carrying an amount of gold equivalent to $1 billion. However, it is not known exactly where he put the treasure, and he did not pay his team or the investors of the expedition. He is currently in prison and will not be released until he pays his debts. In 2002, Stuart Drummond, who played Haangus, the mascot of the Hartlepool United soccer team, ran for mayor of Hartlepool in England, promising free bananas for all students. Surprisingly, he won the election and was later re-elected 2 more times in 2005 and 2009, proving that his term as mayor was more than just a joke. The International Space Station, which is constantly traveling at more than 17,398 miles per hour, has more interior space than a 5-bedroom house. The computer that helped land the Apollo 11 capsule on the moon in 1969 had only 2 megahertz of processing power, 4 kilobytes of RAM, and 72 kilobytes of storage. These specifications are less than what a modern calculator has today. The name of the singer Björk means birch in Icelandic, which is a tree that appears frequently in Celtic and Slavic mythology. In addition, the correct way to pronounce it, according to her in an interview, is Björk. When Beethoven performed his Ninth Symphony for the first time, since he could not hear the loud applause he was receiving because he was already practically deaf, one of the orchestra members went to tell him to turn around so he could see the standing ovation he was receiving. In the first issue of the comic Amazing Spider-Man from 1963, Peter Parker was called Peter Palmer twice on different pages. This is believed to have been simply an editorial error. On another occasion, Stan Lee also made a mistake with the name of Hulk's alter ego, Bruce Banner, calling him Bob Banner in a comic. Because of this error, the name Robert was later added as well. The sensation of a lump in the throat that can be felt when you are nervous or emotionally overwhelmed is medically known as globus pharyngeus. It is an automatic response of the body to emotional stress in which the throat muscles attempt to close while the glottis, the part of the larynx where the vocal cords are located, remains open. 7-Up released a version of its drink called DNL, which is the 7-Up logo upside down, and it consisted of the opposite of traditional 7-Up. Instead of being clear in a green bottle, the drink was green in a clear bottle, and instead of lime-lemon, it was lemon-lime. The sensation of goosebumps, commonly felt when listening to music, occurs because the brain releases dopamine while anticipating the climactic moment of a song. Ants can combine into multiple colonies, forming supercolonies that contain multiple queens. One of the largest colonies observed contained an estimated 300 million worker ants and 1 million queens across a total of 45,000 interconnected nests. The company MasterCard is going to ban automatic charges after a trial period for a product, something that happens with many services. Now, customer confirmation will be required. Once, scientists conducted a study published in the journal Nature that involved going to Antarctica and poking sleeping penguins with sticks until they woke up. This was done to determine whether penguins sleep more deeply in the afternoons, and they concluded that they do. The NFL had one of the strictest broadcast policies in professional sports between 1973 and 2014. If a team did not sell at least 85% of the tickets 72 hours before the game, it could not be broadcast in the local city or within a radius of more than 100 kilometers. This caused, for example, President Richard Nixon to be unable to watch a Washington team game one day. The original story of Mulan has been told in China for more than 1,400 years before Disney decided to make an animated movie and later a live-action film. Despite all that, there is no proof that it was a real historical event. In 2011, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra was facing financial problems that put its existence at risk. After learning about this, the musician Kid Rock, known for making music that is the opposite of classical, organized a benefit concert and managed to raise $1 million for the orchestra. Before becoming a rapper, Ice Cube studied architectural drafting. In 2011, he appeared in a video for the Getty Museum celebrating the work of the famous architects Charles and Ray Eames, in which he toured the iconic Eames House in Los Angeles. The rapper demonstrated his passion for architecture by comparing modular construction to musical creation. The most powerful supercomputer in the world can only perform 0.002% of the operations per second that the human brain is capable of performing. 1 week after the release of Eminem's music video Just Lose It, in which he mocked Michael Jackson and his controversies involving plastic surgery and legal issues, Jackson himself called into a radio show to say that he was angry and that he had stopped admiring Eminem as an artist for attacking him. Furby toys were banned in the Pentagon and other United States government offices because officials believed they could record and repeat confidential information, although they did not actually have that functionality, but they could be modified to do so. It is impossible to make gelatin with fresh pineapple, since the enzyme bromelain in this fruit can digest the gelatin before it sets. This does not happen with canned or cooked pineapple, since heat neutralizes this enzyme. The land that is now Manhattan in New York belongs to Native Americans, who sold it to Europeans in the 17th century for the equivalent of $16. If, at that time, they had placed those $16 in a savings account earning 8% annual interest, today that amount would be enough to buy all of Manhattan and still have $222 trillion left over. But it is not as if there were an 8% interest savings account available at that time. Ford Motor Company had to recall more than 2 million Ford Pinto cars in the 1970s after a design flaw was discovered that could cause the gas tank to rupture. Many accidents were reported because of this, and although a fix costing only a few dollars was found, the damage had already been done. Most of the cars of this model were recalled. The tongue of blue whales can weigh more than a small elephant. It can exceed 4,409.25 pounds and is essential for feeding on krill in massive quantities. Arnold Schwarzenegger was not allowed to dub his own voice in the German version of Terminator because the producers considered that his Austrian accent, the country where he was born, was not tough enough. After the script of the film The Hateful Eight was leaked, director Quentin Tarantino kept the script of his next film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, in a safe, and only Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Margot Robbie were allowed to read it in full, while Tarantino watched them the entire time. A calorie is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree at a pressure of 1 atmosphere. This gives you an idea of how much you would need to run to burn off that gordita you ate earlier. There are positive and negative lightning strikes. Positive ones do not originate from the negatively charged areas of a cloud, and their return stroke is much stronger than that of normal negative lightning, giving them greater destructive potential. But they are less common. In 1978, entrepreneur Richard Branson, who had not yet become a billionaire, learned that Necker Island in the Caribbean was for sale for $6 million. Although he could not afford it, he made an offer of $100,000 as a joke to impress a woman named Joan Templeman. To his surprise, the owner agreed to sell it for only $180,000. So he bought it, and soon after, Joan married him, and they remain together to this day. 22/7 is more accurate for representing the value of pi than the commonly used 3.14 with only 2 decimal places. In the 1980s, mysterious plaques appeared in the pavement in the United States and in cities in South America called Toynbee tiles, which contained cryptic messages about resurrecting the dead on Jupiter. So far, more than 300 have been discovered, and they are believed to be an urban art movement. Arthur John Priest was known as the unsinkable sailor because he miraculously survived 4 shipwrecks, including the famous Titanic. His extraordinary luck in escaping maritime disasters earned him the nickname of the Cat Sailor for his many lives, although eventually his fellow crew members considered him bad luck, so he decided to retire from the profession. The city of Rome is closer to the North Pole than the city of New York. This is because Rome is located at a more northern latitude. On average, women blink more than men. There was a group of people who conducted that research. In ancient times, if you wanted to measure a very long distance, for example, from one city to another, you could hire specialized people called bemetists who walked while counting their steps to calculate distances of hundreds of miles with 95% accuracy. Alexander the Great brought bemetists along on his campaigns across Asia. The President of the United States in 1881, James Garfield, in addition to knowing English, knew Greek and Latin, and had the ability to write with one hand in one language and with the other hand in another language at the same time, because he was ambidextrous. There is a law in Argentina that states the president automatically becomes the godparent of the 7th child born in a family if the previous 6 were boys and the 7th is a girl, or vice versa. The president is required to pay for their education. The video game Space Invaders generated $13 billion in revenue, adjusted for inflation, all in just 4 years from 1978 to 1982, thanks to coin-operated arcade machines. This makes it the video game and entertainment product that has generated the most money of all time. In 1759, Arthur Guinness, the founder of Guinness Beer, signed a lease valid for 9,000 years to operate a 16-square-kilometer production plant in Dublin, Ireland. All of this for an annual rent of £45. The original contract can be seen in the brand's museum. Each year, more than 45 billion chopsticks are used in China. The good thing is that they are made of wood and are biodegradable, unlike plastic utensils. 15 million years ago, there existed a species of koala that was 20 times larger than the koalas that exist today. The only Pixar film in which the Pizza Planet truck does not appear is The Incredibles. Fans have speculated that, in the time period in which the film is set, that pizzeria did not yet exist, or that there is a cloud shaped like the truck. But the truth is that the Easter egg had not yet been fully established, because in The Incredibles 2, it does appear. The animal with the best sense of smell of all, surprisingly, is the African elephant. But it makes sense with such a large trunk. When a team of engineers was building a bridge connecting Germany and Switzerland, they realized there was a difference of 21.2 inches when the two halves met in the middle. This error occurred because Germany measures sea level based on the North Sea and Switzerland on the Mediterranean Sea, which due to gravity have a difference of 88.5 feet, and someone added that difference instead of subtracting it. The longest conveyor belt in the world is located in the Sahara Desert, specifically in Bukra, in the disputed territory of Western Sahara. This belt, which measures 98 kilometers in length, transports phosphates from the mines to the port. The planet Uranus was the first to be discovered using a telescope in 1781, and Neptune was the first to be discovered using only the power of mathematics, since an irregularity in Uranus's orbit was observed, something that could only be caused by another planet. In the year 2000, Sony invented a movie critic named David Manning to use his fictional quotes in the promotion of its films. Shortly afterward, they were exposed. Sony ended up paying more than $1.5 million in total to the people who filed public lawsuits. Antony van Leeuwenhoek, known as the father of microbiology, was the first to observe microscopic organisms, which he called animalcules. His research laid the foundations of modern microbiology, and, despite his lack of formal academic credentials, he was elected a member of the Royal Society in 1680. The gene that has been favored in tomatoes so they have the characteristic uniform red color is also responsible for them losing almost all their flavor. Something similar happened with red apples. Darryl Green, one of the fastest players in NFL history, admitted that he always put Tootsie Rolls candy in his socks before games because he believed it made him run faster. The ridged edges of coins, known as reeding, were originally introduced as an anti-fraud measure, since in the past, some people scraped the edges to obtain gold or silver when coins were made of those metals. Therefore, these ridges made it easy to detect if any coin had been tampered with. This tradition continues today, but only for aesthetic purposes. Cheetahs are the fastest land animals of all. They can reach speeds of up to 74.56 miles per hour. However, humans beat them in endurance. We can travel much longer distances without getting tired. A study was conducted in 2017 in Scotland that examined the effects of music on dogs. Different musical genres were played for them, and their behavior was observed. The conclusion was that they responded best to reggae music and soft rock. The scopitone, created in France in the 1960s, was the ancestor of the modern music video. It was a kind of jukebox with a screen that played 16mm musical films while the song played. Some famous artists recorded videos exclusively for these machines, which were installed in bars and cafes. NASA tried to repair the Hubble telescope the same way we all fix problems with our phones or computers, by turning it off and turning it back on. In the United States, there are 910 automobiles for every 1,000 inhabitants. This is almost one car per person. Nowhere else are there so many cars. For example, European countries have an average of 587 cars per 1,000 people. The largest library in the world is the Library of Congress of the United States. It contains nearly 37 million cataloged books out of 178 million items and all kinds of multimedia material in more than 470 languages, including sound recordings, films, and digital material. It was established in 1800. The structure that holds the record for having the most bathrooms of any in the world is Wembley Stadium in London, England. In total, it has 2,618 restrooms. The first acting job of Dwayne Johnson, also known as The Rock, in something other than professional wrestling was on the series That 70s Show, where he made an appearance portraying his father, Rocky Johnson, in the 70s. Dinocheilus ausubeli is an unusual lobster discovered in 2010 in the depths of the Philippine Pacific Ocean. Its name means terrible claw. Because of its asymmetrical claws, one is significantly larger than the other. Most interestingly, it has bright eyes with a special reflective layer that helps it see in the dark depths of the sea. The longest worm in the world is Linnaeus longissimus, and it can measure up to 180.45 feet. The first episode of South Park was accidentally included on the discs of the PlayStation game Tiger Woods PGA Tour 99. The episode was used only as test data, but it could be viewed if the disc was inserted into a PC. The game had to be reissued, but many copies containing the episode still exist. During the Middle Ages, due to superstitions, many cities got rid of black cats, which caused the rat population to increase. It is believed that this was one of the factors that allowed the plague to spread more quickly and across more regions. Horses are more closely related to rhinoceroses than to deer. They come from more closely related evolutionary branches. Also, horses cannot see directly in front of themselves when trying to look at objects very close. In the United States, it is common to use a system that disposes of organic waste through the kitchen sink drain using a garbage disposal. However, because it uses too much water and can clog pipes, it is rarely used in other countries. In places such as Austria, Portugal, and the Netherlands, it is even prohibited. Our eyes actually capture everything upside down. When light passes through our eyes, the image is projected onto the retina in an inverted way, meaning what is above appears below and vice versa, similar to the optical effect of a camera obscura. However, our brain is programmed to automatically process this information and flip the image. Platypuses, this animal that looks like a glitch in nature, lays eggs but is a mammal, which means it also produces milk. So in theory, it is the only animal that can make its own custard, except it is also venomous. I told you it was very strange. Stress can cause people to perform poorly in their activities, since it often occupies brain activity that we would normally use for the tasks we need to complete. This is according to research by experts. Statistically, it is very unlikely that a massive impact would cause fragments of Mars to reach Earth. Of the more than 50,000 cataloged meteorites, only a small number, fewer than 500, have been confirmed as originating from Mars. Some of these meteorites contain evidence that the red planet once had water on its surface. Croissants were invented in Austria and are believed to represent the moon on the flags of Turkey and the Ottoman Empire. Despite switching from analog to digital television in 2012, South Korea has an area where analog television signals are still used. This area is near the border with North Korea and is maintained for North Koreans who secretly watch South Korean television. The Tunit, also known as the Dorset culture, were the original inhabitants of the Canadian Arctic before the Inuit. According to Inuit legends, they were extraordinarily strong and could cut blocks of solid ice using only their teeth. Although they were shy and avoided contact with strangers, they mysteriously disappeared about 700 years ago. If you wanted to cook a chicken using only the energy from a slap, you would have to hit it at a speed of 5,461.94 feet per second. In other words, extremely fast. Banana plants are mistakenly identified as trees. In reality, they are very large herbs because they do not have a persistent or woody stem, meaning they do not have a trunk. Geese have teeth on their tongues and also on their palates. Basically, their entire mouths are made of teeth. Well, they are not actually teeth. They are structures that help prevent food from falling out while they are feeding. Actor Steve Carell never won an Emmy for Best Comedy Actor during the years he portrayed the character Michael Scott on the series The Office, which remains a favorite to this day. Meanwhile, actor Jim Parsons, who played Sheldon Cooper on the series The Big Bang Theory, won 4 Emmy Awards during that same period of time. On a small island in the Pacific Ocean called Pingalap, 10% of the population has complete achromatopsia. That means they cannot see colors, only black, white, and shades of gray. This condition limits vision during the day, but it can benefit vision at night, which makes activities such as nighttime fishing easier. It is believed that the more sarcastic a person is, the more creative they are. But that does not mean you should go through life trying to be more sarcastic. The mother of actor Jack Black, Judith Love Cohen, was an aerospace engineer who worked on the lunar module of the Apollo missions and on the Hubble Space Telescope. According to studies, playing action video games helps people make decisions faster. It also increases sensitivity to stimuli in the field of vision, which helps with multitasking activities such as driving. When the PlayStation 4 consoles were released, they had a retail price of $399, but according to a component analysis, it cost Sony $381 to manufacture each one. They barely made profit from console sales. The actor Jeremy Piven suffered mercury poisoning in 2009. This happened because he ate sushi twice a day, every day, for 20 years. Some fish species can contain excessive mercury and cause problems when consumed in large amounts. Having 101 Dalmatians would cost a fortune in real life. The average monthly cost of maintaining a single dog is the equivalent of $150, including food, veterinary care, vaccines, accessories, and so on. If multiplied by the number of dogs, it would be $15,150 per month, which would total $181,800 per year, an income earned by less than 1% of the world's population. So it does not seem like a very good idea. In 2009, Burger King launched a campaign where if you deleted 10 of your Facebook friends, the restaurant would give you a hamburger. Those friends would be notified that their friendship was worth less than a hamburger. NASA developed a thermal coating so efficient that it allows a person to hold in their hand a material heated to more than 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. This special coating is made of quartz glass fibers, and 94% of its volume is simply air. Cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, are key microorganisms in global photosynthesis. They convert solar energy into chemical energy stored in biomass at a rate of approximately 450 terawatts, representing between 20 and 30% of all photosynthetic productivity on the planet. Their ability to fix carbon and generate oxygen makes them essential for ecosystems and global climate regulation. Gunpowder, which, as we know, was invented in China, was used long before to make fireworks. Many years passed before it was first used to make firearms. In Europe during the 18th century, house numbering began to be established as mandatory. As a result, there were protests from people who believed it would be a government tool to spy on them. Today, it is a system used all over the world. Anatoly Bugorsky is known as the man who survived putting his head inside a particle accelerator in 1978 while checking defective equipment. He was struck by a proton beam with radiation 1,000 times greater than the lethal dose. Surprisingly, according to his description, he only saw a flash brighter than 1,000 suns and survived with only some after effects that do not completely affect his daily life. Hawaiian Airlines allows you to bring a box of 11.02 pounds of pineapples on board for free on any flight leaving Hawaii. Who is coming with me to Hawaii for pineapples? The trip that the members of the Beatles made to India ended badly, since the guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi asked them to deposit 25% of the profits from their next album into his account at a Swiss bank as a tribute or tithe. John Lennon immediately refused outright. In the United States, the number of vacant homes is 6 times greater than the number of homeless people. There are 18.5 million empty houses and 3.5 million homeless individuals. Canada is the country where the most donuts are consumed per capita and where there are more specialty shops dedicated to this food. The Tim Hortons chain has greatly contributed to this national popularity. 1 out of every 10 people in Iceland will publish at least one book during their lifetime. This country has more writers, more books published, and more books read per person than any other place on the planet. Jerusalem syndrome is a documented psychological phenomenon in which people who previously showed no signs of mental illness develop psychotic episodes upon arriving in Jerusalem due to its religious significance. It is one of the best-known geographic disorders, along with Paris syndrome, caused by the shock some tourists feel when visiting that city. More than 10% of the electricity in the town of Albertville in France is generated from biogas produced during the manufacture of Beaufort cheese, which is very popular in that area. The company Mozilla, the creators of the Firefox browser, discovered in a test that simply offering an option to donate money in Bitcoin caused donations overall to decrease by an average of 7.5%. In Finland, all betting and gambling services are controlled by the government, and all profits are reported and donated to charity. In 2015, 3 prisoners from a maximum security prison defeated the Harvard University team in a debate competition. Bruce Lee won a state cha-cha-cha dance competition in Hong Kong in 1958 before moving to the United States. He once mentioned that he learned to dance that Cuban rhythm 1 year after he began learning Kung Fu. If a person does not try a new food dish before the age of 35, there is a 95% probability that they will never try it. This is because as people age, they are less likely to try new things. Some Roman statues had their hair sculpted separately so it could be replaced. If the person being depicted changed their hairstyle, it could be updated more quickly and cheaply. A neuroscientist conducted research to find the songs that make people feel good. On the list, number 1 was Don't Stop Me Now by the band Queen. Jellyfish inhabit all the oceans of the world and have survived 5 mass extinctions over 700 million years, even though most of these species do not have a specialized digestive system or a nervous, respiratory, or circulatory system. Peter Mayhew played Chewbacca in all the Star Wars movies except the 2 most recent ones. Even so, he appears in the credits as a Chewbacca consultant. The largest cashew tree in the world covers an area of nearly 75,350 square feet and produces more than 60,000 fruits each year. This tree has 2 genetic anomalies that cause its branches to grow outward and form new roots when they touch the ground. This species of fruit is where cashew nuts come from. The air inside potato chip bags is not actually normal air. It is nitrogen gas used to keep them fresh as if newly made. In addition, they are inflated so they do not break during transport. Kansai Airport in Osaka, Japan, is an artificial island built specifically for the airport. Due to land and sea movement, a special hydraulic system had to be implemented to maintain it, since it was sinking and could have disappeared completely. Pizza Hut launched a pizza with a double crust in Singapore. They called it Double Sensation and promoted it as a pizza inside a pizza, but people thought it was just an excuse to use fewer ingredients. Scientists at Binghamton University are developing concrete that heals itself. It achieves this with a type of fungus that activates when there is a crack and generates calcium carbonate that solidifies. The distorted guitar sound in the song You Really Got Me by the Kinks was achieved when guitarist Dave Davies cut the speaker of his amplifier with a razor blade. This sound influenced the heavy metal and punk genres that would become popular in the following decades. There is a boat that has been stuck in the rapids above Niagara Falls for more than 100 years. Nobody has tried to recover it. The Beijing Olympic Games in 2008 began exactly at 8:08 and 8 seconds on the 8th day of the 8th month of the year 2008. This was done because of the ancient belief in that country that the number 8 brings good luck. Carrots do not actually improve your eyesight. This is a myth that became popular during World War II due to propaganda from the United Kingdom, which had invented a new type of radar that helped them identify German bombers. To keep it secret, they claimed their pilot's success was due to a diet high in carrots. The lightning bolts you can see when you touch a plasma lamp are visible because the sphere contains a noble gas at low pressure, usually neon or xenon. When high-frequency electricity passes through this gas, the electrons become excited and collide with each other, releasing energy in the form of colorful light. It is a process similar to what occurs in the Northern Lights. If all the tweets posted each day were written down, they would fill a book of 10 million pages. Out of all that information, probably only 1% is worth it. Would you dare to read that book? Some research has been published seeking to find a correlation between the presence of Walmart stores and obesity in areas of the United States. Although a study from 2011 claims this connection, other experts point out that it may be more related to the concept of food swamps, which are areas with a high concentration of fast food and unhealthy options. When helium is cooled to extreme temperatures, almost near absolute zero, it becomes a superfluid. That means it can flow without friction, it can climb the walls of containers, and it can even leak through spaces only a few molecules wide. There is a location in the Black Sea where scientists found ships up to 1,200 years old so well preserved that the engraved marks of the original builders can still be seen. 45 million years ago, Antarctica was a dense forest. This was discovered when fossilized turtle bones were found in the middle of the arid land of the South Pole. Scientists finally reached the conclusion that the chicken came first, not the egg, since the protein that makes eggshells hard is only produced by these animals. So, mystery solved. NASA observed in astronauts who spent more than 6 months in space a condition that caused changes in their vision, caused by pressure variation that literally changed the shape of their eye. Jupiter is the fastest spinning planet in the solar system. Due to the intensity of its rotational movement, the planet is flatter at the poles than at the equator. It takes just under 10 hours to complete one rotation. The founders of Google were originally convinced to name it back rub, which translates to massage on the back. Good thing it ended up being Google. There are marine animals shaped like tubes that can grow longer than a blue whale. They are called pyrosomes and are actually composed of individual creatures that join together and work as a team. They are also bioluminescent and glow when other animals touch them. The Elizabeth Tower in London, which houses the Big Ben Bell, is slowly leaning. Experts estimate that it could reach the same angle as the Tower of Pisa in 4,000 years. It is impossible to know what the universe really looks like because 96% of it is made of dark matter and dark energy, which are undetectable to humans. The particles of these substances do not interact with regular matter or light. Either way, we are missing out on it. Mumbai in India is the only city in the world that has, within its urban limits, a national park wildlife reserve where large carnivores such as leopards and tigers live freely and are not in captivity and can walk into the city if they want to. The film The Room by Tommy Wiseau, which has fans around the world because they consider it so bad that it is good, was the first movie to be filmed simultaneously on 35mm film and high-definition digital in the year 2003, which increased the budget by thousands of dollars. The flag that has gone the longest without changes, making it the oldest flag in the world, is Denmark's flag. The company Toyota produced only 2 special convertible 2000 GT cars for the 1967 James Bond movie You Only Live Twice, because actor Sean Connery did not fit in the car with the roof on. Today, these cars are worth millions of dollars. To promote the film Contagion, Warner Bros. Canada created 2 giant petri dishes treated with bacteria and fungi and placed them in a storefront display. After a few days, the bacteria and fungi grew, revealing the movie's logo. It was the first bacteria billboard in history. 7,000 years ago, the Sahara Desert was a prairie or a grassland full of vegetation suitable for agriculture. In Africa, more people have access to mobile phone services than to basic services such as drinking water and electricity. The oldest captive lizard in the world is named Muja and lives at the Belgrade Zoo in Serbia. He was born in 1937 and survived 2 bombings during the Second World War, when the zoo was almost completely destroyed, as well as the bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999. Apples float in water, but pears sink. Apples are 25% air, which is why they can float. In 2003, Morocco offered the United States to send 2,000 monkeys to Iraq to help with the armed conflict taking place at the time. They were going to be used to detonate landmines, but the offer was rejected. According to a study, people who go grocery shopping are 7% more likely to buy junk food if they bring their own bags instead of using disposable bags. They are also 13% more likely to buy organic products. In the Queensland region of Australia, it is illegal to own a pet rabbit unless you can prove that you are a magician. This is because if the species were to spread in that area, it could cause an imbalance in the ecosystem. The characteristic sound turkeys make is only produced by male turkeys. They use it mainly during courtship to attract females and show territorial dominance. A day on Venus lasts longer than an entire year on Venus. This happens because its orbit around the Sun is faster than its rotation, although the difference is very small. The first distance limit established to separate territorial waters from international waters in the 17th century was 3.1 miles under the cannon shot rule, since that was the distance a cannonball could travel at the time. Laughter has a positive effect on the immune system. When we laugh, antibody production increases and immune system cells are activated, which helps strengthen the body's natural defenses against infections. Therefore, laughing regularly can be considered a natural boost for our system. In Suriname, there is a day when all owners of exotic birds gather in downtown Paramaribo, the main city, to hold a singing contest for these animals. According to a study in Manhattan, 72% of people use public transportation, and the remaining 18% use their own car to commute to work. This figure is very different from the average in the United States, where only 5% of people use public transportation to get to work. In the scene where squirrels sort nuts in the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, real squirrels were actually trained to do it, and it took months. They were even trained to attack the stunt double of the character Veruca Salt. If all the points Wayne Gretzky scored during his hockey career were removed, he would still be the all-time points leader if only his assists were counted. He is the greatest player of all time, if you ask any ice hockey fan. Tiger Woods has been ranked #1 in the world golf rankings for 683 weeks, not necessarily consecutively. Currently, he is ranked 7th. The Goliath tigerfish is known for being a larger and more extreme version of piranhas. It has 32 teeth the size of shark teeth, and there have been cases in which it has attacked humans and even crocodiles. Canadian law states that no passenger may leave an airplane without a parachute. Elephants, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses, and sloths are the only mammals in the world that cannot jump. Although when rhinoceroses and hippopotamuses run, there is a moment when all their feet leave the ground. That could be considered a small jump. Rubber bands tend to last longer if they are stored in a refrigerator. In 1955, medical researcher Jonas Salk decided not to patent his polio vaccine for the greater good of humanity. Had he done so, he would have earned approximately $7 billion. His discovery saved millions of lives. During the filming of the movie Resident Evil Retribution, a platform collapsed, injuring 16 people, most of them extras. When emergency services arrived, they had difficulty distinguishing between those who were seriously injured and those who only had zombie makeup. The normal pregnancy of elephants lasts 2 years. It is the longest gestation period among mammals and allows the development of their large brains. In the 1990s, the government of South Africa dismantled all the nuclear weapons it had manufactured and possessed. It became the first nation in the world to do this voluntarily. The author of the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling, has more money than the Queen of England. While the Queen has $520 million, Rowling has more than $1 billion. The best-selling manga or Japanese comic of all time that is still being published is One Piece, which began in 1997 and currently has 103 volumes and more than 516 million copies sold. An average United States citizen will eat 35,000 cookies in their lifetime. This equals more than 1 cookie per day throughout their life. Dogs can guess what time you will arrive home based on how much your body scent has faded, if you have a regular schedule. Concorde's supersonic airplanes flew so high that passengers received twice the radiation dose compared to a conventional flight. A German soldier named Hermann Detzner became famous for supposedly escaping British troops in New Guinea during World War I, and later wrote a book titled 4 Years Among the Cannibals. It described all the adventures he experienced. Until years later, he admitted that most of the book had been invented, and that he had only been hiding in one place. Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, appeared in an episode of The Simpsons in 2012, where he recorded his lines while under house arrest in Great Britain. And, since he did not have audio equipment, he recorded them directly over the phone. Cheetahs are considered small cats because they do not have the ability to roar like lions. Instead of roaring, they make sounds like meows, chirps, and purrs to communicate. The name Antarctica comes from the ancient Greek word for bear, Arctos. There are more people using Facebook today than the total number of people who existed on the planet 200 years ago. Bakelite, invented by Leo Baekeland in 1907, was the first fully synthetic plastic in history. This revolutionary material became so popular that it was known as the material of 1,000 uses and was used to manufacture everything from telephones to jewelry. Its commercial success was so great that it inspired the entire industry to develop other synthetic plastics that later replaced it. Netflix is 22 years old. It has existed since before Google, although at first it was a different service. They mailed DVDs. 90% of Canada's population lives within 46.60 miles of the United States border. According to a study, 84% of people who decide to become vegetarian or vegan eventually return to eating meat. During World War II, the company Bicycle, which specializes in manufacturing playing cards, made special cards in collaboration with the United States and British armies. Between the 2 layers of paper, the cards contained a secret map that could be used to escape from prisons in Germany. They only had to be submerged in water for the map to be revealed. The Romans boiled must, which is unfiltered grape juice, in lead pots to create a syrup called sapa. During this process, the acid in the must reacted with the lead, forming lead acetate, also known as sugar of lead, which had a sweet taste. They used it to sweeten inferior wines and foods, since at that time they had few sweeteners besides honey, with the small detail that this process made the wine toxic. Giraffes have the same number of neck vertebrae as humans. Both species have 7 vertebrae, but in giraffes, they are much longer. QR codes were inspired by the game Go. In this board game, players know where the pieces are even if they are slightly out of position or not perfectly aligned. This same idea was the principle behind making QR codes error-resistant. Broccoli is classified as a vegetable, but at the same time as a flower. I classify it as a no thank you. Just kidding. Eat broccoli because it is very nutritious. The largest festival held each year in the Faroe Islands has an attendance of around 10,000 people. This place has 50,000 inhabitants. That means 1 out of every 5 people living in that country attends this concert. Leonardo da Vinci was one of the earliest known figures in Europe during the Renaissance to support veganism based on the ethics of animal rights. It has also been mentioned that one of his habits was buying caged birds in order to release them. To put the small M on M&Ms, an offset printer is used to paint them. Around 2.5 million units of these candies are printed with the M every hour. Only 2 tablespoons of honey would theoretically be enough fuel for a bee to fly around the world. This is only in theory, since a bee could not actually complete the entire journey or store that amount of honey. Koalas sleep up to 22 hours a day. This is because their eucalyptus leaf diet provides very little energy. One of the earliest methods of artificial lighting in cities during the 19th century was carbon arc lamps, which were placed on very tall poles and worked by passing electric current from batteries through 2 nearby carbon rods that could reach temperatures of more than 7,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Paper airplanes have existed long before real airplanes. It is known that in China, paper was folded to make it fly at least 2,000 years ago, although they were not called paper airplanes. They were more similar to birds. The European Union has legislation that encourages scientists to ensure that artificial intelligence systems in the future respect human rights. And there is also a section in that same document that says these new artificial life forms will have a kind of fundamental rights that protect them. When the movie Assassin's Creed failed at the box office in 2016, Disney ordered the cancellation of other video game movie productions that were being developed at the Fox studio it had acquired, including a Mega Man movie and a movie based on The Sims. The song All By Myself by Eric Carmen, which has been covered by many artists such as Celine Dion, uses the melody of a classical piece by the Russian composer Rachmaninoff, since Carmen believed it was in the public domain when he composed it. However, that only applied in the United States, so he later had to share credit and 12% of all royalties. Jellyfish can clone themselves. If they split in half, 2 or more organisms can form from the original jellyfish. Sea cucumbers can throw out their digestive system if they get upset, although it grows back later. This mechanism is called evisceration and serves to distract or scare away predators. If the optimal temperature and pressure conditions are present, water can exist in liquid, solid, and gaseous states at the same time in a container. This is called the triple point. Canada has more lakes than all the countries in the world combined. There is no official count of how many small lakes there are, but it is said there are around 2 million. The Energizer Bunny was created as a parody of the Duracell Bunny. It exists only in North America because the trademark Duracell, held on mascot bunnies since 1973, ended in 1988. Currently, Duracell can use pink bunnies on its products in the rest of the world. In the film The Substance, to make the scene in which shrimp are eaten as repulsive as possible, actor Dennis Quaid consumed approximately 2 kilograms of shrimp during the different takes. This was according to an interview with director Coralie Farge. People who fall asleep in a car for any reason must leave the windows open at least 1.18 to 1.57 inches because oxygen can gradually run out and there is no way to notice it. The cast of the movie Shrek did not meet each other until after they finished recording their voices when they had to do promotional tours. Adhesive tape can generate X-rays if it is peeled quickly in a vacuum. This phenomenon occurs because separating the tape generates electrical charges so intense that electrons are accelerated enough to produce X-rays. The pyramids of Egypt used to be white like snow, but over time, the outer covering fell off, and now they look yellow. Bees can generate electricity because they flap their wings extremely fast. That is how they know if a flower has recently been visited by another bee, since it will have a higher electrical charge. The website IMDb, or Internet Movie Database, is one of the oldest websites still in existence. It was created in 1990 when actors and actresses began being compiled in a news group, and in 1998 it was acquired by Amazon. Today it is one of the most visited websites in the world. In the United States, there are more vacant homes than homeless people. Many are empty due to speculation, abandonment, or because they are in the process of being sold or repaired. Due to the speed at which it travels, astronauts on the International Space Station witness approximately 15 sunrises and 15 sunsets every 24 hours. That really is crazy. Months after the Harry Potter film was released, it was reported that many animal shelters in England had to take in hundreds of pet owls that had been abandoned by their owners. Leonardo da Vinci could write with one hand while drawing with the other. A single arm of a starfish can regenerate an entire starfish. This is possible if the arm retains part of the central disc that contains vital organs. Mosquitoes, also known as zancudos, have 47 teeth. In Japan, on Valentine's Day, it is traditional for women to give chocolates to men at work. Coworkers who are not very popular receive low-quality chocolates called obligation chocolates, or giri choco, while the most well-liked receive high-quality chocolates known as honmei choco. Sea turtles have the ability to sense Earth's magnetic fields. They use it like a GPS to know where they are, which is why they never get lost. Actor Jack Nicholson earned a total of $90 million for his role as the Joker in Batman from 1989. At that time, Nicholson typically charged a minimum of $10 million, but he agreed to accept only $6 million upfront, plus a percentage of the total profits of the film, including merchandise related to his character, which turned out to be a better deal for him. Cats have 32 muscles that control their ears to move them, while humans only have 6, and most of us cannot move our ears. The peace flame in Hiroshima has been burning since 1964 and will only be extinguished when nuclear weapons no longer exist in the world. The Coleco Atom computer from 1983 had several issues, including emitting electromagnetic pulses when it was turned on, so if a tape was inside when powering up, it could be accidentally erased. This was detailed in the instruction manual. On average, the thickness of Antarctic ice is 3,280.84 feet. That means you would have to go through 3,280.84 feet of ice before reaching the ground beneath it. The longest boxing match in history lasted 110 3-minute rounds for a total duration of 7 hours 19 minutes between Andy Bowen and Jack Burke in 1893. It was stopped and declared a draw by the referee because there came a point when they could no longer stand up from their corners due to exhaustion. In the Middle Ages, before understanding bird migration, people had extravagant beliefs about bird transformations. For example, there was a firm belief that barnacle geese were born from barnacles that grew on pieces of floating wood or transformed from them. This belief was so widespread that some even considered these geese to be fish and allowed them to be eaten during the tradition of Lent. 2,200 years ago, the Greek mathematician, astronomer, and geographer Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of Earth using his own mathematical methods without even traveling outside Alexandria, where he lived. In 2004, Microsoft wanted to sue a student named Mike Rowe because he created a website called MikeRowesoft.com, and the company that owns Windows considered it phonetically similar to its name. In the end, the dispute was resolved when they offered him an Xbox and money in exchange for the domain. In most watch advertisements, the time shown is 10:10 because the position of the hands makes the brand look better. Actress Zendaya Marie Sturmer Coleman, also known as Zendaya, who appears in the Spider-Man movies among other things, says that her name has connections to her German and African heritage, and that her first name comes from a word in the Shona language that means to give thanks. She says her parents added the letter Z and Zen because they liked it. They might as well say they invented it. Exercising helps improve your mood and makes your day more productive. It directly affects brain function and memory, and these effects last all day if exercise is done in the morning. Antarctica is the only continent where there are no reptiles. In addition, it has no official time zone. On the surface of a black hole, it is almost certain that it is still the same day that this phenomenon was created, if we consider that a day lasts 24 hours. This is due to time dilation, which makes time practically stop inside it. Jellyfish are made up of 95% water, and some are bioluminescent, meaning they can glow in the dark. In freestyle swimming competitions, you can use any type of arm and leg movement. However, almost everyone chooses the crawl stroke since it has been proven to be the fastest. Cold water heats faster than hot water. Scientists discovered this, which is due to the molecules already being predisposed to change. They called it the reverse Mpemba effect. Apple, with the cash it has available, could easily buy Coca-Cola and even Disney. A man purchased a personalized license plate for his car with the name Null, which means null or no value in computing terms. Although he did it as a joke, he ended up with more than $12,000 in fines because every time a police officer could not read the license plate of a car being ticketed in his city, it was entered as null in the system, and those violations were assigned directly to him. José Bonaparte, the brother of Napoleon Bonaparte, lived for a time in New Jersey, United States, during the 19th century after having been king of Spain, Sicily, and Naples. He supported himself by selling his jewelry and eventually returned to Europe in the final years of his life. The three richest families in the world have more money than all 48 of the poorest countries combined. More than 100 million people in China live on less than $1 a day, and 35 million live in caves. They still do not have houses. Many of these caves are in rural areas and surprisingly provide efficient natural thermal insulation year-round. Emperor penguins can deactivate some of their own organs that they are not using in order to conserve energy, allowing them to remain underwater for periods of more than 20 minutes. At the Olympic Games of 1904, held in St. Louis, Missouri, United States, sports that would now be considered strange and even funny were included, such as rock throwing and climbing a greased pole. The sound produced by Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe is so loud that it can be heard from a distance of 24.85 miles. There is a region in space known as the Interplanetary Highway, where NASA scientists discovered they could send spacecraft with minimal gravitational resistance and without obstacles such as meteorites. It is estimated that by the year 2050, the population of Africa will double. There will be 2,300,000,000 people living on that continent. Rats like to play, and if you tickle them, they make a sound that is the equivalent of human laughter. They are smarter than you think.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.